The Man from the Internet Cafe. The incident I'm about to tell you happened about 10 years ago when I was a teenager around the age of 15 to 16 years old. At that time, there was a craze of Facebook, and kids my age were all about it. It was weird if someone did not have a Facebook account at the time, and I was one of those who did not have one. My family was not that rich, so my parents couldn't afford a separate phone for me. Even affording to send us to school was heavy on them. My house had a landline and one phone with an internet connection that was used by my father. We were only allowed to touch the phone if we were to talk to someone in his presence. I guess you get the idea of how much poorer our family was. Anyway, most of the kids in our school had a device and almost everyone in the school was on social media. So whenever there was a talk about Facebook or something being trendy over that, I felt so out of place, like I did not belong there. I had this friend, Stephanie. She was rich, so she offered to give me one of her old phones. But I had the self-respect to reject her offer every time she brought that up. One day, when I was in the library, she barged in, grabbed my hand, and took me out of there. "Brittany, I have a brilliant idea." She looked into my eyes and said with excitement. "And what might this be about this time?" I asked while rolling my eyes. "Just hear me out, okay? There is this internet cafe behind the school. We can go there together, and you can use Facebook there, and I can teach you everything you need to know about it." She said with hopes in her eyes that I might accept the offer, but I denied it. "No, I don't have money for this. Besides, I'm fine without a Facebook account. It's not like my not using it is the end of the world or something," I said, trying to convince her and myself too. "I've seen the look on your face, Brittany. Keep that aside. I have a plan for you to earn money to spend on the internet cafe," she said with a sneaky smile on her face. "What kind of plan?" I asked. I was curious to know what she had in mind this time. "You know how I'm really bad at math, and you're the top in our class, right?" she asked. "Yes, but what about it?" I had a feeling her idea was going to be something bizarre. "So you can tutor me, and I'll pay you for it. You can use the money to spend in the internet cafe," she said, grinning. "Are you mad? I cannot take money from you. You're my friend. I'll tutor you without it." She frowned at my response. "You know, if you don't take the money, I won't get tuition from you, and my father would assign a tutor for me anyway. So isn't it better that you as a friend teach me with less money than the actual tutor would take?" she said. And she had a point. It wasn't like she would be giving me money for free. "Fine, I'll do it," I agreed. And she started jumping with excitement and happiness, which made me laugh. We decided to meet after class in the library, just so that I could teach her. And there was a secret spot in the library where I used to bury my head in the books, so I took her there to freely teach her. I did not realize it until now that she's denser than she looks when it comes to math, but I still managed to teach her even after a few basic formulas. After I was done teaching her for the day, she dragged me to the internet cafe. As we sat in front of one of the computers, she was too eager and excited that she was the one creating the Facebook account on my behalf. After that, she followed herself and some other accounts that I did not know, including some celebrities she liked. So this is how I got my first ever Facebook account. After that, I would often come to the internet cafe by myself after the tutoring session and would end up spending about an hour or sometimes more. I understood why people were so crazy about this. Facebook is quite interesting and one can say addicting too. At the time, I had no idea that there can be such perverts as well. Who would go after such a young girl even after being much older than my father? During my visits to the internet cafe, I started to notice a man who would sit across my seat, and sometimes I would notice him staring at me. He looked almost as if he was maybe 40 years old, and whenever our eyes met, he would give me a creepy, weird smile. I thought about telling this to Stephanie, so one day after I was done tutoring her, I asked her if it was weird that an old geezer kept staring at me. For some reason, her expression changed, as if she was scared after remembering some traumatizing memory. She started shaking and asked me to tell her if something like that ever happened again. I did not want to dig up any painful scars, so I did not ask anything else and left for the internet cafe. That day, I was engaged in a pretty interesting conversation with a guy over Facebook, so I did not notice when it became dark outside until the worker asked me if I would be leaving or staying some more. After paying for the day, I headed outside, but that was when I noticed the same man also leaving the cafe at the same time. I felt scared and started taking longer and faster steps, but he started moving fast too. That man was following me. I looked around to get any help, but there weren't many people around, so I thought I should just get home as soon as possible to get away from him. I did not have spare change left to take the bus because I spent it all in the internet cafe earlier, so I started running, and that was when I noticed him chasing me. Since I did not have a phone with me, I could not call for help or anything else. As I was running, I noticed a playground, so I went in and hid inside a closed ride. I heard footsteps going back and forth. I guess that man was trying to look for me. As scared as I was already, I tried to stay quiet as possible when I heard the footsteps coming closer to the ride. Put my hands over my mouth and tried to stop myself from panicking. After a while, the sound of the footsteps was gone, but I was too scared to come out, so I kept hiding there. I hadn't realized it, but tears had started to stream through my eyes. After that, I don't know, but I fell asleep there. And when I woke up, it was already morning. So I hesitantly took a sneak peek, and there was no one around, so I ran as fast as I could. And when I reached home, my parents were worried about me. As soon as I saw them, I burst into tears. I ended up telling them everything. I hated the look of pity and disappointment on their faces, and I know that it wasn't because of me. It was because of the condition of our family. My mom embraced me and said while crying, "Don't worry, my daughter. We will work harder and try to protect you from all the bad things in life." After that incident, I stopped going to the internet cafe and told Stephanie about everything. She supported my decision and gave me a pepper spray, saying that she also carried one. I decided to tutor more students and earn even more money, enough to buy a phone for myself. I got to know that there are people in this world who have lesser humanity and more monsters inside of them than the rest of us. And I'm still learning how to find them and stay away from them just to keep myself safe.
Hey guys, thanks so much for all the support. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please feel free to do so. Have you heard about the Ghost of Monday? Ghost of Monday? What's that? I asked, while the others' faces went pale at Jamie's question. You're new in the school. That's why you don't know. Otherwise, everyone on the campus knows about this. It was Carla. There used to be a student who, no matter how hard she tried, was still on the bottom. As a result, she got bullied for that a lot. Eventually, she started to hate studying, and on a Monday evening, she jumped off the library building and committed suicide. Ever since that day, people have witnessed a girl jumping off that building on the same day and time, so it would be wise of you to stay away from the library building after 7 p.m. Jamie continued her story, which seemed like something she had made up, but I did not interrupt and listened silently. My name is Sierra Solis, and I have recently transferred to this school in Manhattan. I was staying in the dorm with other students, where I made friends with Carla and Jamie, who were my room partners. The school building and the library building were 300 meters distance from the dorm, so as I was a book nerd, it seemed pretty convenient to me. And today, as I asked Carla and Jamie to come to the library with me, they started to scare me off by making up some fake horror story. So all I need to do is avoid the library building on Mondays, right? I said with a light tone, and they nodded in response. I went back to my table and started studying in the dorm while the two of them started chatting about boys and stuff. I was always the kind of student who would rather bury my head in books than gossip among friends, and it wasn't like I was antisocial or something. I was social when I needed to. It was just that I enjoyed reading more than anything. My dream was to become a successful writer in the future, and I was ready to work on it. Anyway, I gave my complete focus on the classes, and teachers seemed to be impressed by my performance. Some students talked behind my back, and some students openly admired me. Our school used to end around 4 p.m., and I used to go directly to the library after that and spend at least 1 or 2 hours studying there. I did not always read study material. Many times I would indulge myself in reading novels written by some good and famous writers. "Hey Sierra, want to go karaoke after school?" Kara came to my classroom during lunch break and asked. "Sorry, Kara, I'm reading this very interesting book, and if I don't find out the ending by today, I might die from curiosity," I said while scratching my neck. "You and your books. Fine, but no excuses for tomorrow or we will drag you with us." After saying that, she left, and the bell for the lunch break ended, and the next lecture rang. The last class was literature, and as always, I was completely focused on what the teacher was explaining. Some jealous students often bitched about me, saying that the reason I give my complete focus to the class was because I tried to seduce teachers into giving me good marks. Well, I did not care about their opinions, so none of them mattered to me. Anyway, as the class ended and the teacher handed out the assignments for the week to us, I headed to the library to read the novel I was so into these days. "Hello, Mr. Huber," I greeted the librarian as I entered. "Hi, Sierra. Here to study again?" he asked me with a nice smile. "No, Mr. Huber. I'm reading the book you suggested the other day. It's pretty interesting," I told her, and headed to the novel section. I grabbed the book, took a seat, and opened the page I had marked to continue reading. The book's name was The Eye of the World, written by Robert Jordan back in 1990. I don't know about anyone else, but it was one of the most interesting books I had read in the past few years. As I got lost in reading the book, I did not notice how much time had passed until Mr. Huber informed me that it was closing time. There were just 2 pages left for me to read, and I was not patient enough to wait another day to know the ending. So I asked her to wait just a bit longer till I finished reading. By the time I completed the book, it was past 8, and the closing time for the library was 8 o'clock. So I thanked Mr. Huber for waiting for me and exited the library. As I was about to head out of the building, I saw a student running toward the terrace. I called out for her, informing her that it was almost closing time, but she didn't listen to me. After telling the guard to wait, I went in the direction she ran to help her exit the building before it gets locked. But the moment I reached there, I saw her standing on the railing. She turned to look at me. Her eyes were red and bloody, and then she jumped. I felt as if my heart stopped, and I started to shake with fear. The guard saw me running to him and asked what had happened. I did not think it would be a good idea to tell him about it because I was sure that the girl I saw was a ghost. I walked back to the dorm while terrified of the scene I had just witnessed. Jamie and Carla asked me if everything was all right, but I kept quiet and went to bed. I could not sleep the entire night and kept tossing and turning while continuously thinking about that horrifying memory. I was burning with a fever for the next few days, and as a result, I had to take leave from school. As my fever was going down slightly, one night, Jamie asked me, "You saw her, didn't you? The ghost of the Monday." I turned my head toward her and started shaking. She squeezed my hands and told me that everything will be all right. It's been a month since that incident, and I'm still terrified by it. But I'm more careful than I used to be after that day. I started avoiding going to the libraries on Mondays. Instead, it became the karaoke day for the 3 of us.
On September 24th of 1991, Seattle grunge titans Nirvana released their most successful album to date, entitled Nevermind. Perhaps most famous for the hit single Smells Like Teen Spirit, the album showcased how the band's loud, raucous sound, when combined with Kurt Cobain's signature melancholic songwriting, could produce some of the catchiest but most jarring songs ever recorded. However, the 6th track on the album, simply titled Polly, has a distinctly different sound to the other songs on the album. Instead of a cacophony of power chords, the track features a lone acoustic guitar that is occasionally accompanied by the lone, gentle hiss of a cymbal, and the reason for such a bare-bones approach might well be down to the song's lyrical content. Let's take a look at the first few lines. Polly wants a cracker. I think I should get off her first. I think she wants some water to put out the blowtorch. The bizarre references to parrots and welding equipment might seem confusingly cryptic at first, but there is most definitely a method to Cobain's lyrical madness. You see, he was inspired to write the lyrics to Polly after hearing of a horrific incident of kidnap and torture, which took place in his home state of Washington. On a night in June of 1987, a man named Gerald Arthur Friend of Lakewood, Washington, was cruising the streets of Tacoma when he noticed a large gathering of teenagers, having apparently just departed a nearby rock concert. Gerald waited until one of the girls was isolated, then cruised up to her, rolled down his window, and asked if she needed a ride home. There's no telling how reluctant she was to get into the vehicle, but we know that at some point, she asked to be let out and Gerald refused her. When she began to panic and made attempts to flee the vehicle, Gerald pulled out a knife and told her she'd be killed if she made any more attempts to escape. Upon arriving back at his mobile home in Lakewood, Gerald dragged the girl from his car, tied her up, then suspended her from a pulley system he drilled into the ceiling of his home. Then, for the following few hours, he proceeded to blindfold her, violate her, and torture her with household items, including, just as the song states, a blowtorch. There's no telling exactly what else Gerald put the girl through, as her identity was kept secret, and whatever statements she made to the cops were mostly forbidden from public release. But we can be certain that by the time Gerald seemed to get bored of her, the girl was convinced that she was about to be killed. Gerald pulled her down from the ceiling, untied her, then dragged her out to his car again. The girl apparently lulled him into a false sense of security, acting as though she were catatonic, or at least too frightened to resist any further. But then, while passing a gas station near Puyallup, she burst into action, opening the car's door, diving out, then tucking and rolling to absorb the impact of the fall. Gerald was apparently stunned by this display of bravery and guile, and by the time he turned around to go back to look for her, the girl was long gone. This miraculous escape was then immortalized in the Nirvana song line of "She caught me off my guard, amazes me the will of instinct." Despite being in severe pain from several rather serious injuries, the girl ran to the gas station and screamed for the clerk to call 911. Gerald saw this, realized it was him that was now in extreme danger, then burned rubber all the way back to his mobile home, where he grabbed a few essentials, then went on the run. The next day, it was by pure happenstance that a Yakima County Sheriff's deputy ended up pulling Gerald over for a basic traffic violation. Gerald thought he might be in the clear, given that the girl didn't know his name, and since she had been mostly blindfolded, he believed there was no way she could lead the police back to his home. On the contrary, the girl had been peeking through a small gap in her blindfold, had gathered enough information for her to work out where she was. The cops knew Gerald's name, and when the sheriff's deputy ran it through the system, the game was up. In the end, Gerald Friend was convicted of his heinous crimes and was sentenced to 75 years in a federal correctional facility. We can hope that his victim has long since moved on from the incident and is leading a somewhat normal life. And at the same time, we can also hope that a monster like Gerald remains in prison until the day he dies. But long after his soul departs the earth, the song Polly will continue to be listened to by those who discovered Nirvana's music, meaning that Gerald Friend's horrendous crimes will live on for as long as the song exists.
I remember in 2008 when I was in the last year of high school, and our school was going through the transition. It was took over by another school. The new school was setting up new things, new boards, bigger classrooms, and also half of the staff was let go and new teachers were being brought in. We were sad to see that Mr. Costa was going. He was one of the best Spanish teachers we had, and getting a new Spanish teacher was something we were all looking forward to. We had a little break from the school till then, and we waited for the call. And then the call came after the vacation we just had of the 10 days, and the first day we went. We were pretty excited, especially for our teacher. Our new Spanish teacher, we heard that she was some pretty teacher we would have. Some of them said that she was one of those Playboy girls, and some even said that she was the sexy nun from those weird Italian movies. I wasn't sure about it. Kids made all kinds of stories that you shouldn't really believe in. Then the moment came. It was our Spanish class. We were all waiting for the teacher to come in the class, and I remember the look on everyone's face. Kids were excited. There were already talks about the new teacher in the school, but it was our class that was the first one to catch a complete glimpse of her. And we remember even the male teachers were rounding up near our class, making appearances again and again, asking if the teacher had come in yet. And well, after about 15 minutes, she appeared. And when she appeared, I remember everybody was wide and staring. She was everything that the students were talking about. And I saw her, and I remember she was like a goddess. And I was looking at her and getting really mesmerized by the way she looked. And then the things just escalated too quickly. Then it can. She shouted at us, calling us idiots in Spanish, and told us to take out our books. When we did, she asked us questions. And as everyone failed, she would call us stupid. She was curvy, and every time she talked, her whole body would move, and the boys were constantly using that as an excuse to make it jiggle, and she was angry at it. And then she asked a girl to stand up and asked her. The girl said that what she asked was a wrong question, and then they spiraled into a long argument in Spanish. And as the teacher got angrier, her cleavage was getting obscure and visible to the boys who were having the fun with the argument. And then there was a lot of cheer involved, and the frustration was pretty visible on her face, and it was visible on the girl's face too, while all the classroom boys sat and cheered for the new teacher. I believe there was no way to assess where the situation was heading out to. Our class was completely nuanced, and it was the first day for the Spanish teacher, and she was already losing her shit to the bunch of no-good students. I remember seeing her so frustrated with the arguments and the boys shouting that it felt like she wanted to murder us all. And as I looked at her, I saw her moving back to her new improved desk and picked up the big fat Spanish book. And I wondered if she was going to point out the mistakes of the girl. But as she got back, I was witnessing irrational rage, blinding a capable and reliable adult into complete irrational, illogical, and dangerous individual who was in charge of handling the students. She picked the book, walked towards the girl. The girl who was arguing with the teacher was Maria. Her father was Spanish. Basically, Spanish was her first language, and she even had a good command of it, and it wasn't the first time that she pointed out the mistake. She did that before with the previous teacher, and he even applauded her for that. And to me, that is why he's a great teacher, because he admitted when he was wrong and was not afraid of owning up to his mistake. And Maria was one of those prodigal geniuses, so there was no doubt that she wasn't wrong. She was thin and small with glasses over her face, and she was very stern when it came to academic stuff. So I was already rooting Maria's side, and while the whole class knew that Maria was right, it was the new voluptuous Spanish teacher and the boys were cheering for, and for a completely different thing. And as she held the big fat Spanish book in her hand, she came near to Maria. Now the book was a hardcover book, and she caught close to Maria and took the book and smacked it around her face and shouted, "Don't ever fucking dare to raise your goddamn voice in front of me. I will make sure you never get to next grade." And in that moment, the whole class went quiet. There was nothing. But then soon, it was followed by Maria shouting. The glasses she was wearing had glass broken, and that pierced her eyes. And when she got hit, the glasses pierced her eyes, and she was bleeding profusely by her eyes. And moments later, she was unconscious. We remembered the teacher freaking out and ran out of the class. We had no idea what to do, and kids were shouting when the teachers came in and saw what happened. And just minutes later, the whole class was surrounded by police and ambulance, and everybody was just in panic. And the new management of the school had one hell of the first day, and they were panicking. And when the school got surrounded by the parents, things just went off the rails. Even media was quick to get there, and people were freaking out and out for the blood of the hot-looking sinister teacher and the management who hired her without the background check or the demo supervision. While people were looking for answers and blaming the school management, they completely let go the real culprit. She was never found again by the police. But wherever she is, I am pretty sure she is causing havoc.